Hey, welcome back students. Now in this video, I'm going to tell you about the mechanism of labor. I'm going to show you each step of labor. And what I want you to do is understand each step of labor and copy whatever is coming on the PowerPoint behind me, right? So when we talk about normal labor means that the lie of the fetus is going to be longitudinal. Presentation will be cephalic, presenting part will be vertex, the denominator will be occiput, and the most common position for normal labor is LOT. So I am going to show you mechanism of labor from the LOT position, but then normal vaginal delivery could mean that if, delivery is happening from position number 1 to position number 5, any of them, if vaginal delivery is happening, you call it as a normal vaginal delivery or normal labor. I am going to show you from the most common position, that is the LOT position. Right? And all the steps or all the movements which are happening in a fetus while it is traversing the maternal pelvic canal, the maternal pelvis, in order to get delivered, all those movements, they are called as the cardinal movements. And there are 7 cardinal movements, right? Now, before I start with you the mechanism of labor, let's quickly see a few things about the fetal head which are going to come to you handy during this discussion. Although I have done it before, let's quickly revise it. Over here in the fetal skull, what you can see over here, this is the anterior fontanelle, which is a diamond-shaped fontanelle. Then over here, posteriorly, you can see the triangular fontanelle, which is the posterior fontanelle, which is also called as the lambda. Now, it is the posterior fontanelle which lies closer to the occipital bone. So, whenever we have to decide where is the position of the fetus, we have to look at the posterior fontanelle or the triangular looking fontanelle, right? Now, as far as the bones are concerned, over here in front we have the frontal bones, the left and the right frontal bone, which is separated by the frontal suture. Then we have the left and the right parietal bone, which is separated by this brown color suture, which I have marked over here. This is the sagittal suture. The frontal and the parietal bones per se, they are separated by this suture, which is called as the coronal suture. Right? Then the parietal bone and the occipital bone is separated by this suture, and this suture is called as the lambdoid suture. Right? Now, what I want you to understand over here is one thumb rule. See, whenever they are showing you a pelvis, always they are going to show the pelvis from below. Right? They are going to show you images from below. They are never going to show you images from the top. They will show you the images from below. Right? And when they show you the images from below, the thumb rule which you have to remember is that from below, everything what you are getting is a mirror image. So if you are getting anything to your left hand side, it means in the mother it is right hand side. And if you are getting anything to your right hand side, in the mother it means it is the left hand side. Right? I also told you the same thing while we were doing that how to identify fetal positions. And I told you how to identify LOT, LOA, ROT, ROA. LOP, LOA, ROP, ROA. Right? I told you left occipito-posterior, left occipito-anterior, right occipito-posterior, right occipito-anterior. How to identify these positions, I have already told you. But now let us see, suppose the position is the most common one, which is the LOT position. How are you going to identify the LOT position? First, let me show you from above. This image will not come to you. I am showing it to you so that you understand. So over here we have, this is the occiput. So LOT means that the occiput has to face in the transverse direction in left side. That is what LOT means. I know you cannot see anything just now. See, from top, they will never show you anything. What they are going to show you this image, how they are going to show you? They are going to show you from the bottom like this. Right? Now, how are you going to identify that it is the occipito-transverse position? You are going to identify it is the occipito-transverse position if you see this brown color suture which I have marked here in the transverse diameter of the pelvis. First, let me show you an image so that you understand it better. See over here. In this image, what you are seeing, this over here is the sagittal suture, right? So here the sagittal suture, it is lying in the transverse diameter of the pelvis, right? So if the sagittal suture is corresponding to the transverse diameter of the pelvis, then it means they are trying to show you occipito-transverse position. Now left and right is going to depend upon where is the position of the posterior fontanelle or the occipital bone, right? Now in this image, the posterior fontanelle is towards my right hand side, it is towards your right hand side. That means in the mother it is left. So they are showing you left occipito-transverse position. Same thing I am showing you here. Can you see this here now? You can see over here that this brown color line is lying in the transverse diameter of the pelvis, and that means it is the occipito-transverse position, right? And because you can see from here that the red color, this. Can you see the posterior fontanelle, the pink color posterior fontanelle? Yes. Now the pink color posterior fontanelle, it is lying towards your which side? It is lying towards your right hand side. That means in the mother it is towards the left hand side, right? So it is LOT position. Right? And that is how they show you the positions. Always they are going to show you the positions from below. Clear to all of you? Okay. Now let's talk about the first movement, the first cardinal movement. And the first cardinal movement is engagement. Now, as I told you, I am going to show you the entire mechanism in LOT position. But before that, first let's understand what is engagement. Engagement means when the largest transverse diameter of the fetal head has passed through the pelvic inlet or it has crossed the pelvic brim. And the largest transverse diameter, Miss Tina, so pretty. So which was the largest transverse diameter? Pretty, biparietal diameter. So in other words, when the biparietal diameter crosses the pelvic inlet, then we say that the head of the baby is engaged, right? So if this over here is my doll, over here this is the anterior fontanelle, this is the posterior fontanelle, and these are the parietal bones, right? Head of the baby has to be fully flexed, then only you get vertex presentation, right? So now how do you define engagement? So engagement is when largest transverse diameter crosses the pelvic inlet or the pelvic brim, right? So when the head of the baby, when the largest transverse diameter, it crosses the pelvic inlet or the pelvic brim, then the head of the baby is said to be engaged. Is that clear to all of you? Now, what is the time for engagement? Time for engagement in a primigravida female is 38 weeks of pregnancy, and in a multigravida female, engagement occurs at the onset of labor, right? Now, if suppose this over here is an image. Now, in this image, the red arrow which I have shown, that is the largest transverse diameter of the pelvic, of the fetal head, that is the biparietal diameter. And you can see that the biparietal diameter has crossed the pelvic inlet. So that means now the head of the baby is said to be engaged. Clear to all of you? Okay. Now, Clinically, how am I going to know whether the head of the baby is engaged or not? Clinically, I can know the head of the baby is engaged or not by doing a per abdominal examination or by doing a per vaginal examination. Right? Now, on per abdominal examination, if I want to know that the head of the baby is engaged, what we do is we arbitrarily divide the head of the fetus into 5 equal parts. Right? So arbitrarily, the head of the fetus is divided into 5 equal parts. Now what I am going to do is, I am going to place my fingers and my thumb just above the pubic symphysis, and I am going to see if I can feel the entire head of the fetus. Then that means all the parts of the fetus are felt. That means 5 by 5 of the head of the fetus is felt. Right? Now, let me explain it to you in a little better manner. So, look over here, all of you. So, in order to understand how we are going to tell about engagement and how we are going to know whether engagement has occurred or not, imagine this pelvis is the maternal pelvis, right? And here we have the fetus. Right? Now what you're going to do is you are going to palpate above the pubic symphysis with your 4 fingers and your thumb. Now, if the entire head of the fetus can be palpated with your 4 fingers and the thumb, that means the head has still not gone inside the pelvis. That means how much head is palpable? 5 by 5. All the 5 parts are palpable. Right? Now suppose, let us take the head a little down. Now, when the head goes a little down, now what is happening? Now I can palpate it. Only I am using my 4 fingers, not the thumb. Now the head is palpable with the 4 fingers. So now I am going to say that 4 by 5 of the head is palpable. Right? So head is 4 by 5th engaged. Right? Now, suppose head goes a little more down. Now, when head goes a little more down, now I am using only my 3 fingers, and with 3 fingers, I can palpate the entire head. Now, when head goes a little more down, it will become 2 finger, 1 finger, and ultimately, not any part of the head of the fetus would be palpable. Have you understood this? Okay, so that means with the number of fingers and the thumb which you are using to palpate the fetal head, that represents the part of the head which is palpable. So I want all of you to look at the image which is there coming to you on your screens. Now on the screens, how many fingers are being used to palpate? So it is 4 fingers are being used to palpate. That means it is 4/5 of the head which is palpable. Till here it is clear to all of you, right? So 4/5 of the head is palpable. Now, how do you define engagement? Engagement means when 2/5 of the head is palpable or less than 2/5 of the head is palpable. So if on examination 2/5 of the head is palpable or less than 2/5 is palpable, then you say that the head of the fetus is engaged. First, is this point clear to all of you? Is this point clear to all of you? How you are going to know how much of the head is palpable? Right? So I want all of you to look at this image over here. Now, in this image, tell me, how many fingers, including the thumb, are being used to palpate the head? It is all 5 of them are being used. That means head is 5 by 5 of the head is palpable. Now, if 5 by 5 of the head is palpable, what does that mean? That means the head has not gone inside the pelvis. In other words, head is free floating, right? So, head is free floating just now, right? Now, when head is free floating, and if you are doing Leopold's third maneuver, now when you will do Leopold's third maneuver and you will try to move the head from side to side, because head is free floating, it will very easily be movable. That means that head will be ballotable. So whether I say that head is 5 by 5 palpable, whether I say head is free floating, whether I say on Leopold's maneuver 3, the head is ballotable, all that means the same thing, right? What was Leopold's fourth maneuver? When I do Leopold's fourth maneuver, that is the pelvic grip, and I see in 5 by 5, when the head is 5 by 5 palpable, that is it is free floating, what am I going to get? I am going to see that my hands are going to, my fingers are going to converge below the presenting part. So in case the head is free floating, what are the findings? When the head is free floating, the findings are 5 by 5 of the head is palpable. On Leopold's maneuver 3, ballotability is present, and on Leopold's maneuver 4, what happens? The fingers converge below the presenting part. Now, the moment head goes inside the pelvis, even if it has gone 4 by 5th, now only one part of the fetal head has gone inside the pelvis. Just now engagement is not occurred. Why? Because engagement is said to occur when only 2/5 of the fetal head is palpable. In this case, just now 4/5 of the fetal head is palpable, right? You can see 4/5 of the fetal head palpable. But in this case, yes, the head has gone inside the pelvis. Just now engagement hasn't happened. Now when head has gone inside the pelvis, right? So in 4 by 5 part palpable of the head, what will be the Leopold maneuver 3 finding? Now, will you be able to move the head from side to side? You will not be able to move the head from side to side. So Leopold's third maneuver, head will not be ballotable. Right? And when I'm going to do a Leopold's fourth maneuver, my fingers are going to diverge. Now they cannot meet. Now my fingers are going to diverge. So please remember that Leopold's maneuver are not telling you whether engagement has occurred or not. Leopold maneuver is just telling you that the head has gone inside the pelvis. Right? And this condition, when the head goes inside the pelvis but has not yet engaged, that is called as that the head is fixed. So you will say head is fixed, but you will not say that the head is engaged. So when 4/5 of the fetal head is palpable or when 3/5 of the fetal head is palpable, findings are the same. The head is fixed, head is not engaged. On Leopold's third maneuver, it is not ballotable. And on Leopold's fourth maneuver, your fingers are going to diverge. Right? Now, when only 2 by 5th of the fetal head is palpable, then we say that the head of the fetus is engaged. Right? So when 2 by 5th is palpable or less than 2 by 5th is palpable per abdominally, then you say that the head of the fetus is engaged. Have you understood? Right? Okay. Now, if you have understood this, I want all of you to look at the image which is there on your screens and tell me whether the head is engaged. By looking at the image, tell me whether the head is engaged or not. How many fingers are you using here to palpate? So you are using 2 fingers to palpate, right? Only 2 fingers are being used to palpate the fetal head. That means 2 by 5th of the fetal head is palpable. And when 2 by 5th of the fetal head is palpable, that means the head of the fetus is engaged. Clear? Okay. Now, I want all of you to quickly fill up this table. I have told you everything what I wanted to tell you in this table. So now you are going to, once you are going to pause this lecture here, copy this table and fill up this table, right? Now, the next method of knowing whether the head of the fetus is engaged or not is by per vaginal examination. Right? Now, on per vaginal examination, I am going to tell you one term, and that term is the station of fetal head. Now, what is the station of fetal head? Station of fetal head is the position of the fetal head on per-vaginal examination with respect to the ischial spines. Right? So I'm repeating the definition again. Nothing to see over here just now. First, understand the definition. Then I will lift the pelvis in my hand and I'll show you this. Right? So what is station of fetal head? Station of fetal head is the position of the fetal head with respect to the ischial spine on per-vaginal examination. Now please remember, on per-abdominal examination, the parameter which you were seeing whether the engagement has occurred or not was when the biparietal diameter crossed the pelvic inlet. But when we are talking about the station of fetal head, we are not trying to see the biparietal diameter. When we are talking about the station of fetal head, we talk about the leading point of the fetal head. That means the lowest point of the fetal head where it is lying in comparison or in relation to the ischial spine. Ischial spines can be very easily palpated, and that is why it is a landmark for defining the station of fetal head, right? So first see in a diagrammatic representation, then I'm going to show it to you, demonstrate to you how the station of the fetal head can be determined. Now in the diagrammatic representation, I have drawn a funnel shaped pelvis for you. You can see over here I have marked the ischial spine, and the ischial spine is the most important landmark, and that's very easily felt in all the pelvises. Right? Then we have the pelvic brim. Please remember that the distance between the pelvic brim and the ischial spine is 5 centimeters. Then you can see over here we also have the pelvic outlet. So the distance between the ischial spine and the pelvic outlet again is 5 centimeters. Now when I will be doing a per-vaginal examination, now suppose head of the fetus is above the level of ischial spine. So this is the level of ischial spine, this pen, and head is above the level of ischial spine. Then I'm going to say it is zero station. It is negative station, minus station. And if head of the baby is below the level of ischial spine, so this pen is what is the level of ischial spine. So if I can feel the head below the level of ischial spine, that is what is called as the positive station. So plus sign means head is below the level of ischial spine. Minus sign means head is above the level of ischial spine. And if head is exactly at the level of ischial spine, you say it is zero station. Right? Now, depending upon how many centimeters above the level of ischial spine or below the level of ischial spine, we give it numbers, right? For example, if head is 1 centimeter above the level of ischial spine, it is -1. Similarly, we have -2, -3, -4 and -5, because the distance between pelvic brim and ischial spine is 5 centimeters. So we have -1, -2, -3, -4 and -5. Now similarly, distance between ischial spine and the outlet is 5 centimeters. So +1, +2, +3, +4 and +5. Clear to all of you? So most important landmark is ischial spine, and if head is at the level of ischial spine, it is zero station. If it is above it, it is negative station. If it is below it, it is positive station, right? So, the number, as I told you, what does the number represent? Number represents the distance from the ischial spine in centimeters, right? So, suppose I say that head of the fetus is at -3 station. What do you understand by that? You are going to tell me that, ma'am, minus means that the head is above the ischial spine and it is 3 centimeters above the ischial spine, right? +2, what would that mean? +2 would mean that the head is below the ischial spine. And how many centimeters below the ischial spine? 2 centimeters below the ischial spine. Now, engagement is said to occur when the station of the fetal head is at 0. So if the head of the fetus is at zero station, that means head of the fetus is felt at the level of ischial spines, then you say that the head of the fetus is engaged. So we have two definitions for head of engagement. One is clinically. So this is clinically. Clinically, if per abdominally you can feel 2/5 of the fetal head or per abdominally or less than that, then you say that the head is engaged. Per vaginally, if you can feel the head of the fetus at zero station or below that, then you say that the head is engaged. So I want to show you the image which we had seen earlier again. See over here. Right? Now, if they show you this image and they say that tell whether the head of the fetus is engaged or not. Now, in this image, you can see that the leading point of the fetal head, the lowest point of the fetal head is lying between +1 and +2. That means it has already crossed the zero station. That means the head of the fetus is engaged, because head is said to be engaged if it is at zero station or below it. Clear to all of you? That is how image-based questions can be asked on this. Right? Okay. Now the other thing which I want you to know is, what is the clinical importance of engagement? Clinical importance of engagement is, see, engagement was defined as the largest transverse diameter crossing the pelvic inlet. Right? So if largest transverse diameter has crossed the pelvic inlet, that means the entire head can now cross the pelvic inlet, and that means now you can say that there is no cephalopelvic disproportion at the level of inlet. So once engagement occurs, I can be sure that there is no CPD at the level of the pelvic inlet. Right? Clear to all of you? If this is clear to all of you, now let me introduce to you one more term, and that is this engagement which we are talking about. It can be synclitic or it can be asynclitic engagement. Now, in order to understand synclitic and asynclitic engagement, first I want you to see, I told you that the most common position is LOT, and here you can see that I have put the fetus in LOT position. Right? Now, when the engagement is synclitic, you will see that the sagittal suture. So this brown color line over here is the sagittal suture. So what I can see is that this sagittal suture, it is lying exactly in the transverse diameter of the pelvis. This is the transverse diameter of the pelvis, and you can see that the brown color line is exactly in the transverse diameter of the pelvis. Right? So if the head of the fetus is entering the mother's pelvis such that the sagittal sutures lies exactly along the transverse diameter of the pelvis, then you say that the engagement is synclitic. But it does not always happen that way. It could be that this sagittal suture is tilted towards the pubic symphysis, or it can be tilted towards sacral promontory. But this does not happen always. Sometimes what happens is that head enters in such a manner that the sagittal suture is pointing towards the pubic symphysis, or it could be that head enters in such a manner that the sagittal suture has gone behind towards the sacral promontory. Right? That is what is called as asynclitic engagement. That means the sagittal suture is not lying exactly in the transverse diameter. Either it is deflected anteriorly or it is deflected posteriorly. So we have two kinds of asynclitic engagements. One is anterior asynclitism and the other is posterior asynclitism. Now, it will be a very wrong notion for you to think that if the sagittal suture is deflected anteriorly towards pubic symphysis, you should call it as anterior asynclitism, and if it is deflected posteriorly, you should call it as posterior asynclitism. If you do that, you are making a blunder. Anterior and posterior asynclitism, they are with reference to the parietal bone which you feel on per vaginal examination. right? It is not with reference to the deflection of sagittal suture. So I want all of you to concentrate here. See, over here, the parietal bone, which is going to lie towards the pubic symphysis, that will be the anterior parietal bone, and the parietal bone which is lying more towards the sacral promontory, that is the posterior parietal bone. So in your video, you can see this is the anterior parietal bone. I have written it as A, and this is the posterior parietal bone, and I have written it with P. Now you would know this? Okay. Now what I am doing is, I am moving the sagittal suture towards the pubic symphysis. Can you see sagittal suture has been moved towards the pubic symphysis? Sagittal suture towards pubic symphysis. Now when I moved sagittal suture towards pubic symphysis, which parietal bone are you going to feel first on pervaginal examination? The posterior parietal bone. So when sagittal suture is deflected towards pubic symphysis, it is called as posterior asynclitism because posterior parietal bone is most easily felt. Right? Now look, I am deflecting the sagittal suture towards sacral promontory. I have deflected the sagittal suture towards sacral promontory. It has gone back. You can't even see it. But what you can see is this letter A. That is the anterior parietal bone. Now when you will do a pervaginal examination, your fingers are going to touch the anterior parietal bone, and this is called as anterior asynclitism. So please remember that anterior and posterior asynclitism, they refer to the anterior or the posterior parietal bone, which is first felt on pervaginal examination. Right? So I want all of you to draw this table and write down on one side anterior asynclitism and on the other side posterior asynclitism. Anterior asynclitism means that the anterior parietal bone is first felt on pervaginal examination. Posterior means that the posterior is first felt on pervaginal examination. Now anterior will be first felt on pervaginal examination when the sagittal suture is deflected towards the sacral promontory. Right? So the sagittal suture will be deflected towards sacral promontory. In posterior asynclitism, the sagittal suture will be deflected towards the pubic symphysis. Right? Third important point. Anterior asynclitism is also called as Naegeli's obliquity, and posterior asynclitism is also called as Litzman obliquity. Next important point is anterior asynclitism is more common in multiparous females and posterior asynclitism is more common in nulliparous females. Now, the concept you have understood. For the points which you have to mug up, you can remember a mnemonic ANM, where A stands for anterior asynclitism. Anterior asynclitism is also called as Naegeli's obliquity, and that is why we have the letter N. And M stands for it is more common in multiparous females. So anterior asynclitism is Naegeli's obliquity. It is more common in multiparous females. Right? Now, why this was important? This was not important because you can just mug it up. You can say, ma'am, I'm going to mug it up. That anterior asynclitism means that the sagittal suture is deflected towards sacral promontory, and posterior, it's vice versa. Posterior means that the sagittal suture is deflected towards pubic symphysis. I don't want you to mug up. I want you to understand this concept because you may be asked an image-based question on this. So I want all of you to look up on your screens and tell me, on the screen, what you are seeing. On the screen, you are seeing that the sagittal suture is exactly in the transverse diameter. That means we are looking at a picture of synclitic engagement. Right? Look at the next picture. Now, in the next picture, this over here is pubic symphysis. That means this is the anterior parietal bone. Now, if anterior parietal bone is the one which is first felt, that means it is anterior asynclitism. And anterior asynclitism means that the sagittal suture is towards the sacral promontory, right? Look at the next picture. In the next picture, on pervaginal examination, what is felt? This parietal bone is felt. This parietal bone is near the sacral promontory. That means it is the posterior parietal bone. So that means this is posterior asynclitism. Right? And you can see that yes, the sagittal suture is deflected towards the pubic symphysis. Right? So you will be given images and you can be asked to identify the type of asynclitism. Now, another image which they can give you is an image like this. Now, if they give you again image like this, how are you going to identify? Now, in this image, see over here, what you are seeing is the anterior, this is anterior sagittal bone because it is near the pubic symphysis. So on pervaginal examination, the first felt is anterior parietal bone. So this is anterior asynclitism. This is posterior parietal bone. Right? And this is first felt, so this is posterior asynclitism. Here it is both of them can be felt simultaneously. So this over here is synclitic engagement. Right? So I hope you've understood on image-based questions how you are going to identify engagement, whether it is synclitic or whether it is asynclitic. Right? Now I am going to show you the steps of normal labor and then we are going to study in detail about them. First, let me show you the entire process in one go. But before I talk to you about mechanism of labor, a few more important points which you should know about the engaging diameter. But so what you have to remember is that engaging diameter, that is not just transverse diameter which is going to engage. It is the AP diameter also which has to engage. Now transverse diameter which engages is always the same and that is the largest transverse diameter which is the biparietal diameter. And what is the value of biparietal diameter? It's 9.5 centimeters. Now the engaging AP diameter, it depends upon the degree of flexion. Right? Now, if head of the baby is well flexed, then that is called as vertex presentation. And in vertex presentation, I told you the engaging AP diameter is suboccipitobregmatic diameter, which is 9.5 centimeters. Right? Now, when the head of the baby is deflexed, then the engaging diameters, they become suboccipitofrontal or occipitofrontal diameter. Occipitofrontal diameter, generally it is seen with occipitoposterior positions. Now, please remember that as the head gets deflexed, then it is the larger diameters which come into play. And that is why well-flexed head is the most common thing to happen, because when the head is well-flexed, it is the smallest diameter which will be coming out, which will be getting engaged, right? Now, as the head of the baby is going to get deflexed, it is the larger diameters which are going to come into play, right? That is why even when we are delivering the head of the fetus, we try to maintain the flexion so that it is the smallest suboccipitobregmatic diameter which comes out first, right? Is that clear to all of you? Now, when the head of the baby gets partially extended, then it is Brough presentation, and in Brough presentation, all of you know that the engaging diameter is mentovertical diameter. Now, when the head of the baby gets fully extended, then it is face presentation, and in face presentation, it is submentobragmatic or submentovertical diameters. Right? So the AP diameters which engage, they depend upon the degree of flexion. The transverse diameter which engages, that is always the same, and that is the biparietal diameter. Right? Now I want all of you to write down a few single liners. Engagement occurs with marked asynclitism in. So engagement occurs with marked asynclitism in a platypilloid pelvis. Right? Question number 2. What is the most common cause of deflexed head in a primigravida female at term? So, in a well-flexed head, I told you the AP diameter which engages is the biparietal diameter, which is 9.5 centimeters, and that is absolutely normal. Now, as the head gets deflexed, the bigger diameters engage, and bigger diameters, they will take a longer time to engage. That is why the most common cause for non-engagement of fetal head in a primigravida female is a deflexed head. Now, either you say it's a deflexed head or you say it is occipito-posterior position. That's the most common cause. Second most common cause is cephalopelvic disproportion, and the third most common cause is there is placenta in the lower part of the uterus which is not allowing the head to get engaged. So, in this order you have to remember the most common cause being a deflexed head or occipito-posterior position. That is why in occipito-posterior position, everything is delayed. The engagement is delayed, the progress of the labor is a little delayed because it is the larger diameters which are coming into play in occipito-posterior position because the head of the baby is deflexed in occipito-posterior position. So it is the occipito-frontal diameter which becomes the engaging diameter, and this is the reason why in occipito-posterior positions, if during labor you see that there is occipito-posterior position, you shouldn't do anything. You have to just wait and watch. It is a normal delay. Everything will happen normally. Just you have to have patience and you just have to wait and watch. Right? Okay. Now I am going to show you the mechanism of labor, and simultaneously also I am going to tell you a few important points which you are going to note down. So first, let's have a look at the mechanism of labor. Now whenever you have to tell mechanism of labor, you have to hold the pelvis in your hand. You have to place the fetus in the most common position. Unless and until examiner tells you to tell you mechanism from any other position, you are going to hold the fetus in the most common position, and you are going to start by saying that the lie of the baby is longitudinal, presentation is cephalic, presenting part is vertex, right? The denominator is the occiput, and I have put the occiput in LOT position. This is mother's left hand, this is mother's right hand. Right? On your screens, you will get it on the opposite side. So if it is towards your right hand, I told you it is towards mother's left hand. Right? Now, this is how the process of labor has to begin. So first thing, what is going to happen? The first cardinal movement is engagement, which means that the head or the biparietal diameter is going to cross the pelvic inlet. So engagement has occurred. Now, the uterus contracts and it sends the head further down. So, the second step is descent. Now, as the head of the baby descends, there is flexion. I told you every time flexion will be promoted so that it is the smallest diameters which are coming into play, right? So, please remember that flexion and descent are happening together at the same time. So, till now I told you the first movement was engagement. That means head of the baby is going down into the pelvis, number one. Number two, there is descent, and simultaneously there is flexion, right? Now I want you to look at one more point. I have again brought the occiput at the LOT position. Now, occiput is at LOT position. Now, when occiput is at LOT position, your head is at LOT position. Please tell me the angle between your head and shoulders. The angle between your head and shoulder is 90 degrees. So is with the fetus. In the fetus also, the angle between head and shoulder is 90 degrees. So if occiput is in LOT position, that is cardinal position number 1, right? The position number 1 which we did, right? Please tell me, where is the shoulders? Where are the shoulders of the baby? You are seeing that the shoulder of the baby are in antero-posterior diameter, right? So the anterior shoulder is in position number 3, that is, it is directly behind the pubic symphysis, and the posterior shoulder is in position number 7, that means it is directly anterior to the sacral promontory. Right? So in the image which I have shown you drawn in the, PPT also, you can see over there, I have clearly marked for you occiput. Now when occiput is in LOT position, this star what I have made is representing the shoulder. Where is the shoulder? The shoulder is in antero-posterior diameter. It is lying, anterior shoulder is at position number 3 and posterior shoulder is at position number 7. This much is clear to all of you. Now what happened? Now the head of the fetus went inside the pelvic inlet, and when the biparietal diameter crossed the pelvic inlet, that is what is engagement. Uterus is contracting and it is sending the head further down, so there will be descent, and along with the descent, there will be flexion. Right? The head of the baby will get flexed. Now the question which they ask you is, what is the most important factor which is responsible for the descent of the fetal head? So the most important factor which is responsible for descent of the fetal head are the uterine contractions. Except in the very late stages of labor. In the final descent, it is the maternal pushing effort which leads to the descent of the fetal head. Right? But just now, in this case over here, till now, it is the uterine contractions which are basically responsible for descent of the fetal head, right? Now, in a well-flexed head, that is how we define normal labor. In a well-flexed head, it is the occiput which is going to touch the pelvic floor first. So now what is going to happen? Now, the head of the fetus is descending, and it is reaching the level of the pelvic floor, and the occiput will touch the pelvic floor. Now, the moment occiput is going to touch the pelvic floor, the occiput is going to rotate internally inside the pelvis. Right? So this is what is called as internal rotation. So when head of the fetus is rotating internally inside the pelvis, that is what is internal rotation. Have you understood till here? Now, why is internal rotation happening? Internal rotation is happening because when the head of the fetus reached the pelvic floor and the occiput touched the pelvic floor, that was the place where the ischial spines were also there, right? So internal rotation always occurs at the level of ischial spine. Now, at the level of ischial spine, a very important muscle is attached, and that is a levator ani muscle. Now, this levator ani muscle, it hangs like a hammock. It hangs like a jhula. Right? From both the sides of ischial spine, it will hang and it will come in the midline. Right? So when the occiput of the baby is going to touch the pelvic floor, in other words, it is going to touch the levator ani muscle, due to elastic recoil, the occiput will turn anteriorly and it will face, or it will lie directly behind the pubic symphysis. Right? This is what is called as Hart's rule. So what is Hart's rule? Hart's rule says that whichever point touches the levator ani muscle or any muscle, that particular part will move along the direction of the fibers of that particular muscle. Right? Now, in a well-flexed head, because it is the occiput which is going to touch the pelvic floor, so occiput is going to rotate, and from LOT position, it will come to lie in DOA position. Right? So, please look over here. What happened? From LOT position, now where is the occiput coming and lying? It is lying in DOA position. So if I ask you by how much did the occiput rotate, you will say that, ma'am, occiput rotated by 2/8 of a circle. Now tell me, is this something good which happened or is it something bad which happened? This is something good, because if the head of the baby has to be delivered, right, then definitely the part which has to be delivered, it should lie directly behind the pubic symphysis in the antero-posterior diameter of the pelvis. So the part which has to be delivered, if it is lying in the antero-posterior diameter, that is something which is favorable. Right? Because in the outlet, it is the AP diameter which is the maximum diameter. So if a part is lying in the AP diameter of the outlet, that is something good to happen, right? So internal rotation of the occiput happens and the occiput now comes to lie in direct occipito-anterior position. So the first cardinal movement was engagement, with which the head of the baby crossed the pelvic inlet, the biparietal diameter crossed the pelvic inlet. Then with the uterine contractions, descent happened and simultaneously flexion happened. In a well-flexed head, it is the occiput which touches the pelvic floor first. So at the level of ischial spine, the occiput rotated, and because the rotation happened inside the pelvis, it is called as internal rotation. And from LOT, it becomes DOA. That means it rotates by 2/8 of a circle. Right? Till here it is clear to all of you? Now I want all of you to look here and near my head. You have to concentrate on my head now. Now, you can try sitting at home on yourself also. Now, what I want you to do is, do not rotate the shoulders. Just rotate your head by 90 degrees. Move your head by 90 degrees. Just move the neck and move it by 90 degrees. Now, when you do not rotate your shoulders and you rotate your neck by 90 degrees, do you feel strain over here? I do feel, and you will also feel. Same thing happens with the fetus also. Now, the fetus did not rotate its shoulders. Just now what happened was that if it only rotated its occiput, right, there will be a lot of, twisting or lot of torsion on the neck of the fetus. Right? Now, in order to avoid that, what the fetus does it also rotates its shoulders. Now, I want all of you to rotate your shoulders in the same direction as your neck. So, rotate your shoulder in the same direction as your neck. Did you feel any torsion? No. So, same thing the fetus does. Now, for the fetus, what was happening when the process of labor started? When the process of labor started, the shoulders were in a very good position. Shoulders were in the AP diameter. Now, because the occiput is rotating by 2/8 of a circle, if I rotate the shoulders also by 2/8 of a circle, the position of the shoulder will not remain that favorable, right? So now the fetus is little confused what to do. Because if it does not rotate the shoulders, there is a lot of torsion on the neck. If it rotates the shoulders by 2/8, it is making it a little more unfavorable for the shoulders to deliver. So what fetus does is, it rotates the shoulder only by 1/8. It does not rotate the shoulder by 2/8, right? So there is slight torsion on the neck, and the shoulders are rotated just by 1/8 of a circle, right? So I want all of you to look at the red arrow on the image which I have drawn. So shoulders are rotated only by 1/8. Now, when you rotate the shoulders by 1/8 in the same direction as the occiput, now in which position is the shoulder lying? Now the shoulders are going to lie in position number 4 and in position number 8. Earlier they were lying like this. Now you have to rotate them. So now they will lie like this in position number 4 and position number 8. So what the fetus did? It internally rotated the occiput by 2/8 of a circle, but it rotated the shoulders only by 1/8 of a circle, and 1/8 of torsion is still in the neck, right? So now if I ask you that at the onset of labor, in which diameter were the shoulders present? So you are going to say that at the onset of labor, the shoulders were present in AP diameter. But after internal rotation, please look and tell me in which diameter are the shoulders present. So over here, this is position number 4 and this is position number 8, right? Position number 4, position number 8. Now look and tell me in which diameter are the shoulders present. You can see that the shoulders are present in oblique diameter, right? Position number 4 and position number 8. So that is oblique diameter. Right? Now look and tell me in which oblique, left oblique or right oblique. For that you have to remember that I told you that the oblique diameters, they are named from the place where they are beginning. So if they are starting from left sacroiliac joint, they will be called as left oblique. Right? So over here it is beginning from the left sacroiliac joint. Always you have to look at the sacroiliac joint to tell the direction of the oblique diameter, right? If the oblique diameter is starting from left sacroiliac joint, it becomes left oblique. If it is starting from right sacroiliac joint, it becomes right oblique. So in this image also, over here is the sacrum. So over here, this will be the sacroiliac joint and this is which side? Left side. So that means it is left oblique. Right? So whichever is the sacroiliac joint, that is the name of the oblique diameter. So after internal rotation, so the shoulders are going to lie in position number 4 and position number 8, or the diameter would be left oblique diameter. And after internal rotation, where will the head of the fetus be? The occiput will be directly behind the pubic symphysis. Right? Now with further descent, what is going to happen? Now with further descent, the head of the baby is going to get delivered. The head of the baby will stretch the perineum. And this stretching of perineum is called as crowning. Now, crowning is not a cardinal movement. You have to remember that crowning is happening during the cardinal movements, but it is not one of the cardinal movements, right? So, with further descent, the head of the baby is going to stretch the perineum permanently, and it will be permanently visible at the perineum. That is called as crowning, but crowning is not included in any of the cardinal movements. The only importance of crowning is that once the head has stretched the perineum, that is once crowning has occurred, that is the time when you will give episiotomy if needed, right? So your cardinal movements till now have been number 1, engagement, number 2, there has been descent, and number 3, flexion, which had occurred simultaneously. Number 4, there was internal rotation. Till now, I have told you only about 4 cardinal movements. Now, 5th cardinal movement is that the head of the baby is going to get delivered. Now, when the head of the baby has to deliver, tell me please, when the head will flex, then it will deliver, or when the head will extend, it will deliver? Obviously, when the head will extend, then it will deliver. So what I am going to do is, I am going to deliver the head, and the head of the baby is delivered with the movement of extension. So look here, which part of the head will deliver first? It is the occiput which is going to deliver first, then it is the vertex, then it is brow, and then it is face. So look here again. First part to deliver will be the occiput, then it is vertex, then it is brow, and then it is face. Right? So now the head of the baby has delivered by extension. Clear? Now, the moment the head of the baby delivers, the neck will untwist itself. Right? There will be untwisting of the neck of the baby, which is called as restitution. So there was a torsion of 1/8 on the neck of the baby. The moment the head is delivered, the neck is going to untwist, which is called as restitution. Please remember that restitution is also not any separate cardinal movement. Right? Restitution is no separate cardinal movement. Restitution is a part of external rotation, which I'm going to explain to you now. Right? So, yes, the untwisting of the neck is happening, but that untwisting of the neck is a part of external rotation. Now, let's understand what external rotation is. Now, once the head is delivered, now the part which has to deliver is the shoulder, right? And as you can see, the shoulder is lying in the oblique diameter. Now, this shoulder, it will have to first come and lie in AP diameter, then only it can get delivered. So now what is going to happen? Now the shoulders are going to return back to the AP diameter. Now when they are returning back to the AP diameter, they are moving backwards by 1/8 of a circle. So the shoulders moved by 1/8 of a circle to come to lie in the AP diameter, so that now the shoulder is directly behind the pubic symphysis. Now, when the shoulders were rotating internally, externally the head was also rotating, right? So when I am looking at the baby, what I am seeing is that after the head delivers, the head is rotating externally, right? Now, because the head is rotating outside the pelvis, this is called as external rotation. Right? Now, actually, this external rotation is happening. Why? This is happening because inside the shoulder is rotating. The internal rotation of the shoulder is manifested as external rotation of the fetal head. So, by how much are the shoulders rotating? The shoulder are rotating by 1/8 of a circle backwards. Right? So, please remember that internal rotation was happening in anterior direction. External rotation is happening in posterior direction. Right? They are both happening in opposite directions. Clear to all of you? Okay. One other thing which I want you to understand. Now, once the head of the baby got delivered, I told you that the neck of the baby untwisted and it went back by 1/8 of a circle. Now, when the shoulders went back by 1/8 of a circle, the occiput again went back by 1/8 of a circle, right? So, external rotation of the head total happened by 2/8 of a circle because restitution is a part of external rotation, right? Although internally the shoulders are rotating only by 1/8 back, but because restitution happened, first untwisting of the neck happened, which took the occiput back by 1/8, and then external rotation per se, the actual external rotation happened, which took the head back by 1/8. So occiput is going to go back to its original position from where it started its delivery, right? And when the patient started the delivery, the occiput was in LOT position. So when the head will go back by 1/8 of a circle, during restitution, and then it will go back by 1/8 of a circle. During external rotation, exactly it will come to lie in the same place where the delivery started. So if I ask you after external rotation, where is the occiput located? You will say that the occiput is located again in the LOT position. So occiput is again in the LOT position. Right? And if you see, the face of the baby is facing towards the mother's right thigh. So occiput is in LOT position and face of the baby is towards mother's right thigh. Right? Now I know, yes, the internal rotation of the shoulder is complete. The shoulders are lying in the antero-posterior direction. So now I will deliver the anterior shoulder first and then I will deliver the posterior shoulder. Right? And now there will be expulsion of the body of the baby by lateral flexion. That is how delivery happens. So I will show you all these steps again. But before I show you all these steps again, let us quickly revise the 7 cardinal movements of labor. What were the 7 cardinal movements of labor? Number 1, there was engagement. Number 2, descent happened, uterus contracted and it descended the fetal head. Simultaneously flexion happened and then the occiput touched the levator ani muscle, and due to elastic recoil, the occiput now moved by 2/8 of a circle anteriorly and it lied directly behind the pubic symphysis. This is called as internal rotation. Simultaneously, there is a torsion in the neck of 1/8 of a circle, and shoulders only move by 1/8 of a circle anteriorly. So the shoulders lie in the oblique diameter. Right? So after internal rotation, because the head is directly behind the pubic symphysis, now with further descent, the head of the baby will be delivered by the movement of extension. After extension, please do not say that restitution is a cardinal movement. It is a part of external rotation. So now what is going to happen? Now the shoulders are going to move back into the AP diameter, and this internal rotation of the shoulders is manifested externally by the external rotation of the fetal head. So there will be external rotation of the fetal head. After external rotation, obviously the shoulders will get delivered, and then there will be expulsion of the body of the fetus by lateral flexion. So these are the cardinal movements. Quickly look at the entire procedure again. So this is LOT position. Right? First movement is engagement. Right? Now, over here you are seeing that just now the shoulders are in AP diameter. Right? Now there will be descent and there will be flexion. Now the occiput will touch the pelvic floor and occiput will lie directly behind the pubic symphysis. It will move by 2/8 of a circle. Simultaneously, the shoulder will only move by 1/8 of a circle and it will lie in the left oblique diameter. Right? Now with further descent, the head of the baby will be delivered by the movement of extension. Now the moment it is delivered, there will be untwisting of the fetal neck, but we are not going to say that it is a cardinal movement. Now what is going to happen? Now the shoulders are going to move back from the oblique diameters. They are going to rotate backwards by 1/8 of a circle to lie in the AP diameter. Right? Now, when the shoulders moved back, it was visible externally in the form of external rotation of the fetal head. Now, the shoulders are lying in the AP diameter. So, now the anterior shoulder will be delivered first, then the posterior shoulder will be delivered. Right? And then the entire body will be delivered by lateral flexion. Clear to all of you? Okay. So now, bacho, on the slides, I'm just moving the slides slowly so that you can just pause these slides and write down everything which is important about the mechanism of labor. Each and every point I have told you while I was telling you the mechanism, only this is so that you can note down. I'm going to just move through these slides once. Right?